Building your Airbnb business. Now, there's a couple of ways you can do this, right? You can either use the rent-to-rent model or you can use the Airbnb Management model. Now, we've used both. We started primarily in the rent-to-rent scheme, and now we're starting to really start to scale the management side of things. So we've got 28 units that we now run via both. We manage them for landlords and investors, and obviously we have our own rent-to-rent too. So this business can be very, very lucrative if you do it properly and you know how to get places, get units in the right areas and manage things properly, right? But I'm going to go through this document with you here. It's going to give you a better idea of what strategy is really going to suit you best. And yeah, you can be the decider on what's going to work for you. So the first thing you need to do, right, is set up a company. You're not going to be doing this in your personal name. You're going to have this done through a company. So it limits the liability. And obviously this, it's better for tax reasons as well for it to be in a company. I'm not going to bore you with all the compliance and stuff like that, but here's a couple of things you're going to need. You're going to need to join the ICO and the property reader scheme. You're also going to have to do your public liability and stuff like that too. But when you set up your company, you're going to get a company code come through. You're going to use that to then open a business bank account. So now you can start trading. And the next thing is a professional email, a logo, and a website. Now, this isn't something that I want you to spend 6 weeks doing. It's something that you need to do and get done, but it's not something that is that I cared loads about at the start. But it is something to when you're emailing in landlords or you're emailing estate agents, you look professional. You have a website now. You look presentable to these people. Now, I understand as well. I'm not very good at websites and stuff like that. I feel like when I first started, I got yeses by the way that I was speaking to people with a demeanor, with conviction, with knowing absolutely everything and understanding the craft, right? So this stuff's important, but when you're speaking to agents, speaking to landlords, you need to know what you're talking about, and that's gonna, override any website or logo. Okay. So I'm gonna go through the rent-to-rent side first. Okay. So rent-to-rent. So what is rent-to-rent? Rent-to-rent is where you rent the property from a landlord and then you re-rent that same property on a nightly basis. Now, and this is where you're going to utilize the Airbnb model, right? So you're going to rent the property from a landlord, you're going to give them guaranteed rent, and then you're going to re-rent it on Airbnb. Booking.com you can also use, Urban Rent you can also use. There's a few other booking platforms that you can use, but Airbnb is obviously the main one and typically the best one that we have used, okay? So an example of this, you're renting a property from a landlord for £1,000. Your bills, so your gas and your electric, are £300. Your council tax is £200, and you also pay Wi-Fi of £30, right? There should also be a cleaning fee in there, depending on how many cleans you're going to have. Who are you going to market to? What's your ideal client at the back end? Are you going to be aiming for contractors? You're going to be aiming for tourists? Depends on the property, right? So you're also going to have a cleaning fee in here, depending on how many cleans you have. But this is just rough. So your outgoings on this one property are £1,500 a month, £1,530. But you've done your due diligence on Airbnb, AirDNA, Property Intel. You've been on there and you realise that this property is decent. I could market this property for £100 a night. So when I take this property off the landlord, yeah, I'm going to be paying him £1,500 a month, but I know that I can rent this property for £100 a night. So that's going to bring you in. So your revenue is going to be £3,000. That meaning, as long as you pay your outgoings, you will take this profit every month. Really good. Sounds too good to be true, right? At the start, I used to think the same. And when I took on our first deal and we had a booking come in for 7 months or a lot longer than 7 months from a company from Poland, contractors, and we were profiting £3,000 from 2 properties with our first 2 deals. Now, does this happen to everyone? No. Is there ways you can try and get these contracts? Of course. And it's all about knowing how to market too, because that's very important, okay? But this is an example of a deal. So why would a landlord want to do this with you? So you're going to pay the landlord guaranteed rent and obviously other benefits, right? So when you're speaking to landlords or you're speaking to estate agents, you need to put your best foot forward all the time and understand that you're actually offering a service to the landlord. You're not a tenant who's just going to take ruin the property, not really care if anything goes wrong. You're going to look after it, and you have to look after it so it's looking its best all the time for when clients and guests are coming to stay, right? So benefits to the landlord. You'll deal with any maintenance up to 250 quid. That's what we've done and what I would say for you to do. If you have a boiler breakdown, of course, the landlord's ain't going to deal with that. But if there's anything like a scuff or something, small, you sort it, right? That's the benefit. They can kick you out if you pay the rent late. So with a normal tenant, you're going to have to give them 6 months notice or 2 months notice if you're in England, 6 months if you're in Wales. And then they can turn around to you and say, I'm not leaving for another 6 months. Whereas when you're a company, they can kick you out the next day because you don't have any rights, right? Because you're a company, not a tenant. You're a tenant, but you're not an actual tenant. You're a company. It's a company let. Okay. Another benefit is the property is going to be cleaned weekly because whenever you have someone come and stay, the same day or the day after when they leave, the property is going to have to be cleaned because you're going to have new guests coming in. Another thing that we offer to our landlords is if they want to come and inspect the property at any time, whenever they want, as long as it fits in with our schedule with listing, with guests, as long as they give 5 days notice, we can approve and say, yes, you can come and check the property out. What you'll find is if you have a landlord on board, the first 4 weeks, they'll come, they'll check. And then they'll realize that the property's been really looked after. And then so they may come one more time. 2 inspections in 8 weeks or in 12 weeks. And then when they realize the standard that you're keeping the property to, you're not going to hear from them. As long as you're paying the rent on time and you're looking after the property, it's just down to you then. They trust you, okay? So how are you going to get these deals? There's a couple of ways. So first of all, let's start with landlords, right? You can start reaching out to landlords on Open Rent, on Gumtree, offering your service. What do? You have a company. You go for guaranteed rent. Everything that you need to think of now needs to come out, right? Another place to look when you're looking for landlords is people around you. Where can you start? If you're looking to start this business, who can you speak to that may know a landlord, or who can you speak to who is a landlord that has had enough of their tenants? Tenants keep paying them late. They don't care. You can come in and offer your service and be the provider for them. So a good place to start when you're looking for landlords is people within your circle. Can you offer referrals to people? If you bring me a landlord that's got a property empty and you can let me have a conversation with them and they turn into a lead or they turn into a client, I'm happy to offer you £250,000. Oof, you're not going to give them £250,000. You're going to offer them £250 for a referral fee. And then do you know what you can do then? When you onboard the landlord, you say, to set everything up, this is going to cost £250. So the landlord pays you for an onboarding fee, but you've paid a referral fee of £250. So it's costing you nothing to get properties. That's one way of doing it, right? Finding referrals. But looking at Open Rent, Gumtree, ringing landlords, getting the experience of knowing what it feels like to be told no. Very important. Now, there's obviously some things you're going to say in your script, or you may have a script that's going to help you. But what you'll find is the more people that you speak to, the better you're going to be able to start handling objections. And at the end of the day, you're going to have objections, but you also need to realize that you're offering a service that's going to help the landlord. You're not just trying to make the most money that you can. You're offering them a way out, right? The next way is obviously estate agents, letting agents. Now, the way that I've done this and the way that I teach people to do this is we give you a document. It's a big it's a spreadsheet. It has the letting agent name, the letting agent's company, their phone number, property that you're thinking about, inquiring about, or the property you've inquired about. and you're going to speak to them and find out if they do company lets or not. If they don't, no problem. You follow up in 2 weeks. You must be tracking absolutely everything now, right? And when you're speaking to agents, you're going to come across agents that, yeah, we do company lets. Perfect. So now they are going to be your go-to agents. You're going to speak to them. You're going to be following up with them. Even if they don't have any property straight away, you're going to be following up with them. Continue to follow them every 2-3 weeks. Because what you're going to find is you're going to find a couple of agents that are good agents and you have a really good relationship with them. You're building the rapport with them. And now the next time that a landlord says to them, oh, I'm open to company let, or we're happy to have a company let, you're going to be that person on the front of their mind. Why? Because you're following up with them all the time and you care about them. You're asking them questions about their day. You're trying to find common ground on the phone with these people. Another way to speak to agents is to go into the estate agency. Ask, and this comes with confidence, right? But when you're in a position where you're happy to be told no and happy to be told no, F off, perfect. Because when you can go through objections, you need to speak to 30 agents. One of them will say yes, and that's be all and end all of it, right? You can have a certain script, you can talk on the phone, but it's a numbers game. You need to be putting in the work, and when you put in the work, the numbers will start coming. But it's so important that you track everything, right? So every agent you speak to, every landlord you speak to, you track, you understand what properties they have, if they have any. Do they do company let? Do they not? Where's the common ground with them? Always remember their name. Always write down their name. So when you phone that certain estate agency, you know who you're speaking to, or you ask to speak to that person because you're building the rapport with this person, right? So yeah, a way to do this is to spend the night writing down numbers. So estate agency, phone number, list 30, track them all, and then put an hour aside a day. So an hour maybe on your lunch break, or maybe in the morning before you go to work, or sometime in the day. If not, Saturday morning or Saturday afternoon. If you want to do this, guys, or you want to build a rent-to-rent business or an Airbnb management business, you have to put time aside, and you have to really, I understand everyone's busy. You're all working longer hours now, right? You're picking up overtime shifts. You've got children, but you need to prioritize this because this can really, really make a difference and make change in your life. Okay. Building rapport is so important with agents. Tracking everything is also a massive thing that you need to be doing. So what makes a good deal, right? Now, from my experience, we've dealt with every property you can think of. Flats, 9-bedroom HMOs, 3-bedroom properties, 2-bedroom properties, everything, okay? And the best properties that we have right now are 3 to 4 bed properties. So when you're inquiring with agents, what are you going to be saying? I'm looking for properties, 3 to 4 bedroom properties, blah, 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 blah. Have you got any properties that are, sticking with you at the moment? And they may go, oh, do you know what? We actually do. We've got a property. Oh, well, and that could be your in. So speaking to estate agents is all a fact-finding thing. How can you help them? How can you, that property may be on the market for the last 6 months. They can't rent it out. Well, suddenly you can come in and take it. Okay. But obviously you've got to negotiate rent and everything like that too. But yeah, 3 to 4 bedroom properties are our best performing properties. And if you've got a 3 to 4 bedroom property, you've got to be looking for 2 bathrooms. If you're going to have 8 contractors come and stay there, do you think they're all going to be wanting to use the same bathroom? They've worked a 12-hour shift, and they're coming home, and they've got to wait for everyone to go in the shower. You need to have 2 bathrooms. If you're going to have a 3 to 4 bedroom property, you've got to have 2 bathrooms, basically. Is there parking? Parking is another massive thing, depending on obviously the property and everything like that. But parking is so important, especially for contractors or families, because what people forget is they think Airbnb is just for tourists, when in reality, the most clients that we get are from insurance companies. Someone's had a flood in the area. Now, where are they going to go and stay? Well, their insurance company is going to pay out because they have to move out of their property that day. So when you can get a few phone numbers for these, you can start pitching your services to the insurance companies as well. And that's what we've done. And we've filled a lot of our properties just by having a contact in an insurance company, speaking to contractors in the area, finding vans, calling vans. Like, getting these deals is okay, it's fairly easy. Making sure that you stay profitable, and you've got to be on top of it all the time at the start. You've got to be really on top of it at the start to make sure that you're going to go and benefit well, right? Another thing is, are you close to amenities? Are you close to hospitals? Are you close to city centres, football stadiums, working place? Any developments going on? Are you near them? So that's another thing to look out for. And these are the four main things that I would look out for. Is location, is it parking, what sort of property are you looking at? 3 to 4 bedroom properties. More people that can stay in the property, the more money you can make. How many bathrooms has it also got? This needs to be for practical use as well, okay? So I'm going to go through some benefits here. So I'll start with the cons of rent to rent, right? So the cons of rent to rent. Risk of losing cash if you have no bookings at all. So from this one deal, you've got £1,500 to pay out to the landlord for your bills, for your council tax, okay? So that's your set cost every month. So if you don't bring in £1,500, you're going to lose that money. So if you're working really well and you need to make sure that when you're taking on a property, it's going to be profiting at 50%. If you're going to be taking on a property, you need to be making sure that it's profiting at 50%, right? So that if there's 30 days in the month, you need to fill the property for 15 nights to make sure you break even. But again, if you don't know how to market, then this could be an issue, right? So getting the deals, once you get one deal, that can lead to 15, 20 deals, because you only need to pitch one agent or find one landlord, and they may have, an agency will have multiple properties that are going to be coming on soon or in the next 6-7 months that will work for you. And if you provide a good service, they're going to give you more, okay? Same with the landlord. You may do a good service for him. Suddenly he's going to have he may have 10 properties that he have to give to you. Or he may have another developer that goes, oh, what's that guy doing? Oh, I'll have him as well. And then suddenly you're going to have a pipeline full of deals, right? So you need to make sure you know how to market. Marketing is the most important thing. Cons again, you're paying inflated rent instead of a mortgage. So yes, of course, if you're outlaying money for a deposit for a property, it's a lot more than what it is to get into one of these deals. But you're going to be paying a smaller mortgage. When you're doing a rent to rent, you're going to be renting a property from a landlord. They're obviously going to have a mortgage on the property, or they may not. So you're going to be then paying their mortgage and their profit. Okay. To set up one of these properties costs around £4,000 to £5,000. So anyone saying that rent to rent's free to get into it, you can get into it with little money. Well, £5,000 not a massive amount of money, but yeah, it's going to cost you £4,000 to £5,000, right, to set it up. Depending on whether you've got a property furnished or not. You may have a property that's part furnished that you can use some of their stuff, and so you're not going to need to spend a massive amount on furnishing. But when you're getting into these deals, another thing to think of is, or a thing that a tip that I'm going to give you right now is, when you're taking on properties, you want to be using zip link beds, because if you have a set of contractors come and stay at your property, and say, for instance, there's 8 contractors and you've marked it for 8 beds, but they can also be double beds. They can be double beds or single beds. You can split them apart, and now they're single beds. The contractors are not going to want to stay in the same bed together. So this gives you leverage on who you can actually market your property to, right? Zip link beds are a must. Another con, landlord owns the asset. So he dictates to you what's happening. If he says to you, you're not paying the rent, you're leaving, that's perfectly fine. But he may say to you, look, mate, in 6 months, I'm going to be selling this property. So you've got 6 months left, and then I'm going to be selling it. and there's nothing you can do about it because the landlord is in control, right? Moving on to the pros. This is obviously compared to management now as well, right? So all the profits that you make are yours. You pay your rent to the landlord, everything you make above that is yours. Great, really good. Builds credibility for scaling, right? So when you get one of these properties, it's easy then to leverage that one property and get more because you've got proof of concept, okay? But getting your first deal, it's not rocket science. It's just going to take you some time. But when you get that first deal, this model can be very, very scalable. You have fixed outgoings every month, so you kind of know where you are every month. £300 being really top end of the bill side of things. Council tax is obviously fixed. Your Wi-Fi is fixed, and your rent is fixed. So lower barrier to entry compared to buying a property. You're going to need thousands and thousands and thousands of pounds to buy a property, whereas if you use this model, you can get into a deal £4,000 to £5,000, maybe less. Okay, depending on what you're doing at the property as well. How much are you really having to scale up this property, and what are you going to be adding into the property? Because obviously, the more furniture you buy, the more expensive it's going to be, right? Easy to pitch sometimes. So when you're speaking to agents, it's easier to pitch a company let than what it is to be obviously a management client, because that doesn't work because they're going to be managing the property for the landlord. And a lot of the time, sometimes landlords can be a little bit slower, or because they're tired, they don't really understand. So if you're going to rent the property from them, they just say, yeah, that's fine. I understand what you're doing. I don't want anything to do with Airbnb. I just want you to give me rent, guaranteed money. Okay, perfect. We'll do the rent. Whereas the Airbnb management, you're not going to be outlaying any money. You're just going to be taking off the gross, right? And I'll get into that right now. So Airbnb management, right? This is something that you can use straight away, start using straight away, or you can look at getting some rent, getting some credibility, and then moving into it. Depends on however and what sort of cash you have to invest, okay? So what is Airbnb management? Airbnb management is where you manage a property for landlords. So we charge 15%, yeah? We manage the property for the landlord at a 15% rate. So whatever the gross we bring in, we take 15%. So that looks like this, right? 30 times £100. So this is, for instance, your nightly rate is £100. You bring in £3,000 for this one landlord for the month. So 15% of £3,000 is £450. And you will make £450 profit straight to you without any outgoings. Okay. So as you can imagine, this model is very, very scalable. So again, you're going to deal with cleaners, guests, and maintenance. So what will happen is if there's any maintenance issues, the guests are typically going to be telling you, or your cleaners are going to be telling you, and then you're going to be telling the landlord. You can either use your own guys to go and do the work and then bill the landlord, or you may have a relationship with the landlord where you say, you have your bill team or you have your power team. I'm just going to let you know when there's a problem. You can come and deal with it. But if the landlord's a bit slow, you also need to have a team in place to get things done, because you need to be making sure that you stay proactive with maintenance, because you may have people coming in and staying quite frequent, right? So you need to stay on top of stuff. So basically you deal with the cleaners, the guests, and the maintenance for the landlord. Everything's managed by you. You're in control of everything in regards to bringing in money, okay? Setting up cleans and everything like that. So how are you going to do this, right? The easiest way to start doing this is to start reaching out to landlords. Airbnb. Find landlords on Airbnb. How is their property performing? If it's not performing very well, why is it not performing very well? Have they got bad photos? Can you help them? Understanding how you can pitch or put yourself in front of a landlord to say, look, I'm your answer. Open rent is another way where you can find landlords. And then again, you can also speak to other operators in the industry that are doing rent to rent, or landlords that have their property on Airbnb. Can you manage it for them? But again, this is something that does take time, and you're going to have to speak to a lot of people to get this done, right? Similar situation What property should you go for? We always look for bigger properties, 4 bedroom plus. Why? The more the more you bring in, the more you make. So the more cash you bring in, the more money you make, right? And our best unit that we have is a 9 bedroom HMO, fully ensuited. The landlord was running as a HMO, wasn't doing very well. Now we run as an Airbnb. That one property last month brought us in £7,000 revenue. So I can't remember what do we make off the top of my head. £1,000, £1,050 off one property. This is what I mean. This is what I'm saying. The bigger properties, the more cash you're going to bring in. Okay. So you don't want to be trying to pitch a landlord to speak to a landlord that says, "Oh yeah, you can come and manage my 2 bedroom flat." It may do really well if it's in the right location, right? But the bigger the properties, the more cash you're going to bring in, so the more money you're going to make. So we are very selective now with landlords that we work with, because we're always looking to 3 to 4 bedroom plus properties. How much money they're going to make us? That's when you're running as the management company, or you're an Airbnb management, you dictate what properties you want to take on. Now at the start with the rents, you may have to take one bad deal on. The first deal that I took on wasn't an amazing deal. We made it an amazing deal. We had to take it on. We had to paint the property. We had to change the carpets, the vinyl upstairs. There was bits that we said to the landlord, "Look, we're happy to take on this if you can give us a rent-free period and discounted rent a bit." So he said, "Yeah, okay." So we spent time then adding value to the property to get into it. So yeah, sometimes your first deal isn't always going to be your best deal. Your first deal may be a bit like, but now you've got your foot in the door. Once your foot's in the door, that's going to open up so much more for you. Okay. So let's start with the cons of management, right? You may be working with a landlord that doesn't want to have professional photos done on his property. He doesn't want to pay for them. He doesn't want to put zip link beds. He doesn't want to paint and add value. He just wants to rent the property out as it is. And so you take it on, but you know yourself that it's not going to do very well, because you know that when you're running Airbnbs, what's the main asset that you have? Your photos. Your photos on your listing are the most important, because they are what catches people's eyes. And once you pay for them once, you've got them for however long you have that unit. So professional photos are probably the biggest thing that you need to have when you're starting your listing. Okay. So you may have a landlord that is a little bit, I don't want to spend any money, which can be a problem. Okay. You're dealing with a landlord often and with all your operations. So if you're in a position where the landlord's chasing you down, he's asking you questions all the time. How are we doing? How much have we got? What are we doing? You've got to basically answer to the landlord. Whereas when you're renting the property from the landlord, as long as you pay them the guaranteed rent, they don't care. Whereas now it's on a performance basis, and you're going to have the landlords chasing you. It's not that much of a bad thing, but it is one thing that you need to have in place and understand that when you do this, you're going to have landlords kind of on your back, right? So depending on the property, it's going to be a low payout if it's small business. So to get this business to a very strong place, you need to have 3, 4, 5 units, because if you're bringing in £3,000, £450 profit for you, you need to have a few of them to leave your 9 to 5, right? So you're going to make less per month when you're first starting. When you're starting to scale up, it's going to be really lucrative. You're not outlaying any money, and you're just making profit. Okay. Pros, again, even lower barrier to entry than rent to rent, because you're not putting any money into this. You're just helping the landlord get the property live, and then you're going to be managing it for him. Okay. So again, very high profits as well. No outgoings, no money no money for you to put in. Can be more scalable. Once you have this up and running with the credibility and your reputation starting to build, becomes like clockwork. There's no burden on you of having to pay the rent, right? Because there's not as much pressure. Yeah, you're going to have the landlord that's on your case, but it's not going to be as hard as or as difficult as when you have to physically pay out to the landlord. Okay, it's more revenue based. So you're going to have the landlord on your case, but you're not going to be outlaying money, basically. So these are two strategies that you can use if you're looking to get into rent to rent. And if you are looking to get into rent to rent, please make sure to click the link in my bio or reach out to me and let's have a conversation about you getting started. This is a really good place to start understanding all of this, and then hopefully when we work together, we can get into much better stuff and more in-depth stuff and get you off the ground. Thanks for watching, guys. Like and subscribe, and I look forward to providing more value to you soon.